4 years I haven't seen you. And the first thing you do is bring that thing into my home. You lose respect for me. What to you, D?
Huh?
What to you?
Nothing to me, man. What?
Why you think I come to London? For a vacation? I come here to change my life. To get away from Kingston and Kingston runnings. This is what you want to do. Bring it into my home. In front of my picnic.
I'm ready, Mommy.
Hello, little girl.
I'm not a little girl. My name is Vanessa.
My name is Dee.
D for Daddy.
D for Dennis.
And that is a clip from Yardie. I'm delighted to say been joined by its director, who is none other than Idris Elba. Hello, Idris. How are you?
Oh, how are you? I'm very good, thanks.
I'm all right. Now, I know you've done promotions and stuff for movies before, but does it feel different when it's your film? Like you're not just the star, you're not the star of it, but it's your film.
It does feel different type of questions, and I don't, you don't have to do the rah 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 as much. By rah rah rah, I mean as an actor, you sort of, the movie could be good, bad, indifferent, but you're all about you and your performance. But as a director, it's everything falls on your shoulders, and I think the criticism and praise is slightly different. It's I think it's more fair. It's weird because as a director, you sort of you did make this picture, but you're part of a leadership team of a few teams that have pulled it together. And as an actor, you can really only talk about your performance.
But you own this. I mean, this is an Idris Elba movie in a way that even though you've dominated a lot of films, this not like this.
No, this is a first for me, and it's a welcome one. I've had an amazing time, Simon, and actually I've had a time where I've been most daunted by my work is putting this film out. I've never had to have the responsibility that comes with putting a film out like this.
Yeah, I guess it means you're like first in and last out. It's your gig.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
What were you on the lookout for, Idris? You're obviously been on your radar before, but what was it about this story that made you think, yep, this is the one I'm going to take the plunge for?
Well, I think just to give you some context, it was like 4 or 5 years ago that this script came across my desk, and it was this from a conversation that I had with my director, my agents. I just finished working with Cary Fukunaga, and I said on a film called Beasts of No Nation, and I said, look, I really want to direct a film. I really want to. He was very big inspiration for that moment. Anyway, this script came along, and I remember the book. I remember it being one of the first books I ever read, to be honest, as a young man. I had read paragraphs in books, but not one from cover to cover. And this was it. And I did that because, one, it was one of these popular handbooks, paperbacks that were being passed around the community. Yeah. Have you read Yardie? You go to the barbershop. Did you read Yardie, man? You should read that. And then before you know it, I read this thing and I could relate to some of the aspects in the film, especially the music, especially the sound boy. It was interesting. Just my mum used to read Mills and Boone, you know what I mean? And it was always sort of like in a Hawaii desert somewhere or something, Yeah. But for me, this was like in Hackney, in Willesden, in Stratford. It's all in there. And I was like, wow, I could relate to this. So it stuck to my bones from back then. And then when I read the script, I just knew immediately that I could visualize this. Not as a accomplished director, but from memory banks. And I could feel the energy. I could tell the type of characters. I knew the kind of actors I wanted. It was all sort of immediate,
So this is Victor Headley's book, which came out in 1992. So it was like a cult hit, wasn't it? Self-publishing wasn't really a thing back then, but that was kind of how it emerged, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as early back as the mid 80s, late 80s, this book was being passed around from his, sort of his boot, basically. And then, his boot turned to other boots, and, they got it off the ground that way. Very much, yeah. It was good.
And what was it about? Tell us the story of Yardie as you have told it.
So, I mean, I've told it as a story about the coming of age of a young man who witnesses a traumatic event very early on in Kingston, Jamaica. he's a fatherless, he's a motherless child, and he witnesses the slaying of his brother very early in the film. And from that point on, I take the audience on this journey of what it is to grow with that sort of trauma, to how to manage that as a young, Jamaican man who doesn't do a good job of managing it and finds himself in England and is basically given two choices: left, to go with the resentment and the hatred and all that comes with the trauma, or go with love, and the love of music and the love of the upbringing that your brother gave you. And that's really it, to break it down. The book is a very, very different type of animal. It's like a violent look at the clashes between young Jamaican kids who were deemed Yardies in London and this sort of gangster culture. And I wanted elements of that in the book, but I didn't want to make that film because I feel like we've seen a version of that film before. This film is really about what do you do with the mismanagement of, what do you do with the management of trauma? What do you do with love? What do you do when you're a young black man thrown into a situation like that? And that's what it's about.
And the character you're talking about is D, played by Amal Amin. What were you looking for in? Because obviously he's the central character who we followed through. What did he have to embody? What were you looking for, Idris?
I mean, you know what? I when I was growing up in the 80s, I'm West African descent. I remember nobody from Africa wanted to admit they were African. Okay, the majority of black people in London were Afro-Caribbean. It was the cool, black to be, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And that it was cool because, we had Jamaican superstars, we had Jamaican, sports stars, we had like this culture, food, the swag, and the charisma. The charisma, Jamaican charisma, it has sold worldwide. It's the reason why Jamaica's the biggest tourist destination in the Caribbean. It's the charisma of the people and the confidence. Every Jamaican is a superstar, and they hold themselves that way. And so I needed an actor that embodied that. And Mel Mean has been on my radar since his first film, Kidulthood. And I saw him just before I started getting into this in a film called The Maze Runner, and he was amazing. And when I got to know him a little bit, I found out that his mum is Jamaican, and his dad is from St. Vincent, and he embodied everything that I thought D could be. D isn't a character that's off the page likable, but you needed to like him in order to follow and care for him in the story. So I needed someone to bring that sort of like warmth and love and charisma into it.
So, just stepping back one moment, when you were a young DJ back in the 80s, did you pretend to be a Jamaican?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, there's no like talking on the mic in a Cockney accent or an African accent. You had to do a Jamaican. I don't think my Jamaican accent was very good, but I used to be a selector, which is the guy that picks the records, and then essentially, because I wanted to be an actor, I ended up being on the mic, and I was on the mic with the Jamaican accent, and you could get away with a little bit of echo or delay on your voice. It would work a bit better.
I guess this is a period drama, isn't it? And you've meticulously recreated the scenes in London. I mean, the costumes, the accents, the music. Just tell us some of the period detail that you were looking for here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I go to say that this comes from source memory. This is, I was 11, 12 in 1983, and that's when my senses were starting to blow up. So it's a really important time for me. And, we were very lucky. We shot both in London and Kingston, and we shot, we scouted areas that looked real, that, we shot in Hackney, and Hackney architecture hasn't changed too much. There's new builds everywhere, but the houses that I grew up walking past are still there. So I knew that, shooting in Hackney would be perfect, and it was. We shot actually in Green Lanes, which is in the book as well. And, that was like a big important detail for us. I had a great production team led by Damien Crate, and basically he put together, just the best reference book of the 80s you could possibly find. And it was from that, all this stuff in my memory banks used to come back together. We spent a lot of time trying to we didn't make too much stuff. We actually sourced the real stuff. So everything that you saw in Yvonne's flat was from the 80s. You know, the carpet, the telephone with the lock on it. All of that stuff was, you know, not recreated. It was all very real. And we were lucky. There's still, you know, the 80s was such a big explosion for England in terms of culture and politics and everything. So it's a very well documented time, and we were lucky to get that from the costumes to the vehicles. Those cars are still about. They still look good. People still, you know, cherish them.
And although there are moments of violence in the film, obviously, I think as we've picked that up from the way you've told the story, it's funny as well. You know, it has a swagger and an attitude to it as well.
That's good that you've picked that. I mean, you know, that came from, I suppose, the way we ended up cutting it. Justine Wright, my editor, who cut Last King of Scotland as well. She's amazing, but she wanted to find the heart. It was in the script, it was in all the performances, but we really wanted to find the heart. We wanted to, you know, we relied a lot on the music and the tempo of the music and the, you know, the energy of the music to dictate how we cut that. And then essentially the actors, you know, I was very keen that they did not water down their accents. And if they went from Jamaican to Cockney, that's fine, but I wanted it to be an authentic change, and that for me was part of the rhythm, and there from that, you know, the humour, the levity comes from, you know.
And yes, I mean, you mentioned the accents. It's a very heavy patois, and it reminded me a bit of going to see a Shakespeare play where it takes you like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get into the rhythm of the speech. But then once you're in it, you go, okay, fine, I'm on board now.
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, I was super aware of, you know, that I was asking an audience to really, you know, that aren't familiar with the accent, but to really listen. But what's come from that is that people feel like they've just taken a real authentic journey into, you know, a place they didn't know too much about. I've seen the film with subtitles as well, and it's equally as enjoyable. So I think that, you know, audiences, once they get to see this film, whether they see it with subtitles or not, will feel like they stepped back into the 80s. They will feel like they've been to Jamaica for a second. And that was...
Who gets the subtitles?
Well, Americans. I'm just...
Okay.
No, but there will be there will be a subtitle version available when, you know, eventually it comes out on the sort of SVODs. But, you know, I think this is a film, my hope is that people will watch it, you know, over and over again. You know, there'll be moments. Let's have a look at Yardie. And even if they don't watch it, they'll just, you know, enjoy the music and enjoy the language and enjoy, you know, the visuals.
Yeah, the soundtrack is terrific. The dancehall and reggae tunes. Did you ever consider including the 1967 Desmond Dekker and the Aces track 007?
What? Now, that has won the award for the most inventive link into the Bond. I honestly... You win the award, Simon. You definitely win the award.
I'm just asking about the music, Idris.
Yeah. That's really good. I will give you a round of applause. No, okay. I didn't want to use that track particularly. Didn't feel appropriate. No.
What kind of and as a director, Idris, when you're on set, you've worked with some of the very finest directors. Who have you learnt the most from?
I mentioned Cary Fukunaga earlier. Who I think is an incredible director, and he was the director that definitely, you know, inspired me the most to go and make this movie. Ridley Scott, though. Ridley Scott and I made 2 films, Prometheus and American Gangster, and it's a masterclass. You know, it was just a masterclass. I would be on set watching him work even if I wasn't in the scene, because he's incredible, and he taught me about precision. You know, he taught me that, you know, people watch films 3 or 4 times, and each time you should let them see something new. Each time, and to do that, you need to give layers and layers and layers of information, depth, authenticity, and that's what, you know, I took from Ridley. You know, he was sort of the most, you know, educated man about the film on the set, and of course he is, he's the director. But, you know, he was educated so that if he had a conversation about lenses, you know, he knows what he's talking about and why he wants this lens. And you know, I took that away with me. And I mean, listen, I'm not comparing my movie to anything that Ridley's ever done, but I hope if he sees it, he'll see that I paid attention to some of the things that he's done in his films.
Idris, pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you very much. Enjoy Edinburgh.